Welcome to Save As Ability, a podcast to educate and inform you about disability employment issues. My name is David D'Arcangelo, and I'm your disability policy expert. Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode of Save As Ability. Today we're talking about living with a disability. And as I was looking around YouTube and search volume, because really we want to bring you episodes that you want to see, I recognize that people are looking for what's it like living with a disability. So that's what we're going to talk about today, living with a disability. And the way I thought about approaching it is, well, what are some characteristics? Because people with disabilities, it's such a large group. It's such a diverse group. There's no way you can say, well, this represents living with a disability for all people with disabilities. We're not trying to do that here. But what I have done is I've tried to put together what I'm calling three common denominators, or like some characteristics, I would say are probably shared by most people with disabilities, certainly ones that I've interacted with myself as being a person with a disability, being a father of a person with a disability, being the brother of a person with a disability, right? All of those various prerogatives. There's a couple of common denominators that I've come up with here. So that's what we're going to talk about. Living with a disability and some of those characteristics and things that people with disabilities tend to encounter. Really, the number one thing, I think, is probably barriers. And that's barriers to access, barriers to opportunity. That's really kind of something that all people with disabilities, I think, encounter at some point in time. You know, let's face it, the world is built for people with abilities. It's built for people with full abilities, and people with disabilities usually, traditionally anyways, have not been built in. But now, I think that's changing, and I think more things are being designed, whether it's products or services or the built environment, whatever the case may be. I think universal design is being incorporated more and more for everybody. That helps people with disabilities, but it helps everybody as well. So that's a good thing. But these barriers to access and barriers to opportunities for people with disabilities, they're real. And, you know, the world is not necessarily built or put together for people with disabilities. So it's about overcoming barriers. And, you know, what we say here at people with this at Save As Ability, we're trying to break down barriers through information, through education, through talking about these challenges. The only way you're going to get through these challenges and solve them is by talking about them. So we know that it's a spectrum, these barriers and these challenges to access and opportunity. So really what we're trying to do is break down those barriers. Some people with disabilities really engage in that and really try to be proactive, and some maybe not as much, right? People with apparent disabilities are maybe more active doing it. People with non-apparent disabilities, maybe they're less active doing it. But either way, those barriers are real. Barriers to access, barriers to opportunity is something, unfortunately, that's shared by all people with disabilities, just about. So number two, expectation or characteristic or common denominator, whatever you want to say, is really about how discrimination and stigma impacts people with disabilities. And that's not monolithic, by the way. Let's break that down. There's really like three different things there. One, it's the outward stigma and discrimination that people with disabilities may or may not place upon themselves. You know, what I can or cannot do, or what people with disabilities can and cannot do. Sometimes they rule themselves out of not being able to do things that maybe they could, or vice versa, you know, so that's very complicated. But I like to start first with the person and then talk about the other things that make that up. Number two in this, I would say, is the solar system that are around people with disabilities. So that's the families, it's the neighbors, it's the friends, it's all those people. And those expectations, or sometimes high expectations or low expectations, again, there's a wide spectrum here, but those expectations placed from the outside of the people surrounding the person with the disability really impact that person with the disability. And again, sometimes there's stigma there. Sometimes there's really characteristics that the person can or cannot control. And that becomes difficult because if we focus upon things we can control, that's one thing. It's when we can't control the things and that stigma becomes great from the outside, that becomes really challenging, trying to break those barriers down. And then the third component of this is really the expectations or lack of expectations placed on the person with a disability by society. And we've talked about that. How many episodes have we had about that? Whether it's the media representation, whether it's, the barriers that are put in place on an institutional level by government policies or employment policies, whatever the case may be, those are very real and impact people with disabilities. So again, number 2 has kind of 3 components there. And so just to be cognizant of that. Number 3, we're going to talk about, and that's really like the main emphasis here. And number 3 really helps solve for 1 and 2, and that is challenges with employment. And we know what's the number 1 challenge in that? It's failure to accommodate. We have data from that. We have data from the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. We have employment at the state level in Massachusetts, the Massachusetts Commission Against Discrimination, that oftentimes the largest group facing discrimination in people with disabilities. So, and the number 1 reason being failure to accommodate. So again, number 3 is so important though. This employment is because employment is essential to independence and self-determination. So overcoming these barriers, overcoming the access to opportunities, if you have a good job, if you're employed, if you're able to make your own way, yeah, the money it brings you, but that leads to the independence and the self-determination. It's so essential. It's one of the reasons why we spend so much time on employment for people with disabilities here at Save Visibility. But yeah, unfortunately, these 3 things are just some of the common denominators involved of living with a disability that all people with disabilities, or just about all people with disabilities, have to encounter in some way. So, what we're trying to do here, though? We're trying to inform and educate to overcome these barriers. And you can do it. I know it. I've done it. You can do it. It's easier said than done, though, right? So you got to work. You got to just keep focusing on positive things. The path to prosperity is paved by perseverance. Really is. Stay positive. We can do it. We can overcome these challenges, these barriers. It's part of living with the disability. So we're natural born problem solvers, people with disabilities. If you know somebody, lift them up. And if you're a person with a disability, let's stay positive. You can do it. I believe in you. Let us know what you want to hear on Save Visibility. I'm fired up as usual. Another episode of Save Visibility. David D'Arcangelo. I hope you have a great day. For more information about disability employment issues, please visit our website, disabilityemploymentsolutions.com. The Save As Ability podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel at Disability Policy Expert, or wherever you stream your podcasts. Subscribe, stream, rate, and review our shows. Your ratings and reviews help our show reach new audiences. Produced by Pod Pro Entertainment. Save As Ability lives within a network of podcasts located at podproentertainment.com. #TheNewRadio. Again, my name is David D'Arcangelo, and I'm your disability policy expert. Until next time, thank you. I hope you have a great day.